Battle through the heavens. Grand world. Chapter 273 Deliver the mission. Elder Wu, this is. All the elders were slightly stunned when they saw Wu Changqing bring in a young man. This young man was clearly not a student of the Yunlo Academy. Moreover, judging from his aura, it was obvious that he was advancing in a sharp and fierce manner. He was not as cautious as an ordinary student. Elder Shao narrowed his eyes slightly. He looked at Shaoyan and asked him slowly. The many elders beside him also looked at Wu Changqing with puzzled gazes. Could it be that the reason they were called here was because of this young man? In the crowd, Elder Fang furrowed his brows. Looking at Shaoyan's appearance, he had a feeling that he had seen him before. Greetings, Elder Shao and the elders. Wu Changqing slightly cupped his hands towards the crowd and looked at Shaoyan, who was standing behind him. Even though he was standing in front of a group of Monarch Emperor warriors, the latter didn't show any signs of fear. Elder Fang, you were the one who kept the Saint rank trial participant's bead, right? Wu Changqing looked at Fang Yun and said in a clear voice. When he heard Wu Changqing suddenly ask about what happened a few years ago, Fang Yun was slightly startled, and he subconsciously nodded his head. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. The expression on his face as he looked at Xiao Yan instantly changed. I remember now that Saint rank trial participant is you. Shaoyan looked over and saw Elder Fang. After being momentarily stunned, Shaoyan had already recognized him. Elder Fang, it has been a few years since we last met. It is truly exciting to be able to meet again today. Elder Fang's sudden shout stunned all the surrounding elders. Then, all of them turned to Shaoyan with puzzled expressions. Elder Fang, we have all witnessed the destruction of the bead. Anyone who breaks the bead will die. This could happen on any trial participant. How could this fellow be the Saint rank trial participant from back then? An old man beside Fang Yun coldly harumphed and said in a deep voice. Back then, Fang Yun had brought Guyuan and the others back to the academy. When everyone heard that they had recruited a Saint rank trial participant, they were all wild with joy. However, in less than 2 years, the pearl that symbolized the Saint rank trial participant had shattered, causing everyone's heart to sink to the bottom of the valley. It was not easy for them to forget about it all these years. There was actually someone who took it out to make a big deal out of it. After hearing this elder's words, many of the elders, including Elder Shao, frowned. They looked at Fang Yun, but the latter was still extremely excited. He repeatedly said, "It can't be wrong. It's definitely him." Elder Wu pondered for a moment. When everyone looked at Shaoyan once again, the former slowly stretched out his hand and tore open the trial scroll in his hand. In an instant, 10 rays of light filled the entire space and shone on the faces of the elders. Each of them had an interesting expression on their faces. 10. Saint rank trial participant. Why is he still alive? Seeing the 10 rays of light shooting out from the scroll, everyone's hearts were finally shaken. Elder Fang could not hide his excitement as he stepped forward and praised Shaoyan. Unbelievable, unbelievable. You have arrived here in less than 10 years. Unbelievable. The Saint rank trial participant has returned. The future of Yunlo Academy has finally found a glimmer of hope. Elder Shao's eyes were extremely vicious. He could naturally tell that these 10 rays of light were definitely not imitated at a glance. Immediately, he let out a long sigh. His tone was filled with relief. After he sighed with emotion, Elder Shao went forward and took the trial scroll from Elder Wu. After taking a glance at it, he looked at Shaoyan and said with a smile, in less than 9 years, you have reached the Yunlo Academy. Very good, very good. Have you completed the 3 conditions on it? A true Saint rank trial participant not only required one's disposition and resilience, but also one's extraordinary strength. The conditions listed above were indeed extremely harsh. Even Elder Shao sighed with emotion. However, since he had returned, he must have had an extremely difficult experience. Even if he had not completed one of the conditions, he would still try his best to keep it. When Elder Fang, who was standing beside Shaoyan, heard this, his expression changed slightly. He also recalled the contents of the scroll. He immediately said anxiously, "Elder Shao, Shaoyan just arrived in the Great World when he accepted the trial. He is extremely weak, even if he is Mahyuyang. When he accepted the trial, he also reached the level of a sovereign. You have seen those 3 trials. Even we may not be able to complete them." Elder Fang wanted to speak, but he was stopped by Elder Shao. The latter did not speak, but continued to look at Shaoyan with a smile on his face. When Elder Fang's words left his mouth, the many elders behind him finally recalled that Shaoyan had only just arrived at the Great Worlds fighting monarch during the trial. With such strength, it was indeed difficult to complete a trial of that level. Shaoyan suddenly smiled as he looked at Elder Shao. He slowly raised his hand, and the storage ring on his finger flickered with a spiritual light. A few monarch crystal cards appeared in his hand. The monarch crystal cards sparkled with a golden light, as if they were floating with a layer of gold. Elder Shao received the monarch crystal cards. His mind was slightly immersed in the process, and he immediately understood what was going on. Not bad, nearly 20 million monarch crystal. He returned the monarch crystal card to Shaoyan. Elder Shao looked at Shaoyan with a strange gaze. He didn't care where these monarch crystals came from. This fellow had really exceeded his expectations. 20 million. When they heard this number, all the chiefs behind them were dumbfounded. When they thought about how Shaoyan had only started the trial with the strength of the fighting monarch, everyone's heart almost skipped a beat. This kid was truly a monstrous genius. Second, 5 monarch emperor level middle rank heavenly beasts for the other heavenly cause. After saying that, Shaoyan waved his hand once more. 5 brocade boxes appeared in the air, and they were wrapped by origin monarch key as they floated in the air. When Elder Shao saw this, his expression finally changed slightly. There was a trace of seriousness in his eyes as he looked at Shaoyan. If the 20 million monarch crystals might have come from some ruins, then the difficulty of obtaining the middle rank heavenly beasts of these 5 heavenly cores would be much higher. He flicked his finger and opened all 5 boxes that were flickering with various colors appeared in front of everyone, flickering with brilliance. 5. Spirit key is very abundant. Elder Shao swept his gaze over them and fell silent in his heart. Elder Fang stood by the side. When he saw the 5 heavenly cores, he could not help but feel overwhelmed by emotions. His eyes were filled with excitement. This fellow was really unexpected. It's a pure 5 heavenly cores, especially that metal attributed heavenly core. I feel that it seems to have the spiritual energy of a high-grade heavenly beast. Many of the elders had keen senses. They looked at the 5 heavenly cores in the air and said in a deep voice, "I remember that Mahyuyang also collected heavenly cores back then. However, his heavenly cores were 15 low-grade flames. Compared to the 2, this Shaoyan doesn't seem to be inferior." An old man with a solemn expression spoke in a solemn voice. "The last item, the highest honor of the prefecture." Elder Shao stared at Shaoyan and spoke slowly. This was almost impossible to complete, but it was enough. With the perfect completion of the previous 2 tasks, this Shaoyan had already reached the level of the Saint rank trial participant. The honor of a prefecture. Shaoyan nodded his head lightly when he heard this. He couldn't help but think of the Flame Spirit Gang of Spirit Heaven Mansion. Duruoxi and Bai Lufeng were there. As he was thinking, Shaoyan opened his palm. Under Elder Shao's astonished gaze, a purple token appeared in his hand. On the token, there were the words Spirit Heaven Mansion. The strokes were vigorous and majestic. Below the 3 words, there was a lifelike pill furnace. On top of the pill furnace, there was a golden crown that seemed to be shining with a bright light. This, elders, you should be able to recognize it. Chapter end. Please guys like, comment, share, and subscribe.